Newt Gingrich and Bill Clinton were doing the welfare reforms. And they said anytime you give out federal assistance, it needs to be tied to something that helps get you out of that need for assistance and has accountability to that. That was in 1996. And these definitions go all the way back to 1987 when Jack Kemp was the Secretary of HUD, and Ronald Reagan set up the first usage. That's the first time the federal government gets involved. So it's pretty flat. But here's what was interesting. Everybody was required to have treatment services. Back then it was called wraparound services. If you got a housing voucher, you had services tied to it. And that was how agencies were measured, is how successful your wraparound services were. Then in 2013, the Continuing Care Program, and I point out the word competition, this is the formal title of it, notice of funding availability. This is where Housing First comes in, rapid rehousing, but it's the first welfare program that Newt Gingrich and Bill Clinton had worked on that disconnected the requirements. It now became just vouchers. And in many ways, homeless vouchers in 2014 and forward almost become housing vouchers with no rules. In fact, most of the country, not all the country, but most of the country, the vouchers had less rules than even Section 8 at that time, even less rules than Section 8. And so the big thing 2013 NOFO said is an agency can no longer have treatment requirements. You can no longer require somebody to go to a case manager, to go to an AA meeting, to go to life skills class or job training or any of that. If you have a substance use or behavioral health, mental health, you're not required to go to a 12-step program. All those requirements were broken. And when you go back, the federal government was equally funding almost exactly at one-third. One-third emergency services, emergency sheltering, one-third transitional services, and one-third permanent supportive services. But after all of these changes, emergency services that were one-third in 2013 were less than 4.8% last year, the last 4 years of the prior administration. Transitional housing was one-third in terms of federal spending. It went to 1%. So it went from about 34% to 1% last year. In permanent supportive housing, think long-term housing government subsidy, that was 33% in 2013. That's now 83%. And so if you're a cynic, welfare is over doubled in this area. If you're not a cynic, is it being properly used?